right. Welcome to the Cheap Seats Podcast. This is episode 26 now, I believe, presented by the Cheap Seats Media Network. This is going to be a depressing episode. I'll come out and say it because we're talking about Super Bowl LVIII. And if you don't know by now, 49ers lost to the Kansas City Chiefs yet again for the second time. This is 25-22 in overtime was the final score. And I have on my cousin, Lauren Stan, newly a Stan. I'm so used to, I'm so used to saying your other last name. But no, it's a pleasure to have you on, Lauren. I know you're because you're in my family, you're as big a 49er fan as I am. So I figured why not torture you a little bit, bring you on. Let's talk about this loss. But I mean, I'll start with just your reaction. Where were you watching this? What were your emotions? What's the overall thought on this depressing turn of events here?
Yeah, I couldn't be I was in the best place possible to be depressed.
Yeah.
My husband had planned this trip to Hawaii many months ago, so we were like adding up the calendar, and I think I realized 5 weeks ago, oh, we're going to be in Hawaii for the Super Bowl. Wouldn't it be hilarious if the Niners, made it? We have been in Hawaii all week, but we got there on Saturday, watched the game at a hotel with a bunch of Seahawks fans, it went better than I thought it was
Mm.
going to go. They were all pretty great to me, but I was nervous the entire weekend leading up to it. I had a bad feeling, but kept telling myself, at least you'll be in Hawaii if the worst possible thing happens. And the worst possible thing happened. So, yeah.
That's a pretty good consolation to be in a place like that. So good on you. As people know, I was there in Vegas the whole week. I was at the game. I feel very very grateful to have been there to watch such a it was a really entertaining game. It's a classic Super Bowl. I think it'll go down as one of the better ones. Obviously, it started a little slower, but it picked up, and things were always sort of in a balance. No team really pulled away at any point. It literally came down to the last possession. So I can hang my hat on that and say that I was there for that. But obviously, the result I could have. I wished went the other way, but I had to be a big J. I had to be an impartial journalist, I guess, and I had to hold in my emotions. And I think I did a pretty good job speaking for myself. I know we had Caleb Nixon on in the week running up to the game, and he was there with me, and I think he did a good job of keeping me calm. So shout out to him. But yeah, no, grateful to be there. The atmosphere inside Allegiant Stadium was, I mean, it's, first of all, it's a beautiful ballpark. I will say it's a beautiful football stadium. It's very new. You could tell right away. It's very Vegas. You had Cascade doing a live DJ set before the game, in between the first and second quarters, and in between the third and fourth quarters. So you got a free, well, not free, but you got a DJ concert included for
Yeah.
your $8,000 ticket or $9,000 ticket, whatever you paid for it.
Wild. Absolutely wild. Well, I'm really proud of you. I don't know how you stayed so level-headed. There are a lot of sports media folks that are so biased. It's amazing to me that they're allowed to call themselves journalists. And as your cousin, I know how passionate you are about this team. And the fact that you were able to, put on that big J hat, I'm very impressed.
Yeah, I try my best. Thank you, Lauren. I appreciate it. Yeah, no, I mean, I am biased, but I think for this, I just like tried to be as objective as possible, and I got to because Caleb sort of covered the game from the Chiefs' perspective, so I got to do it from the 49ers' perspective and go into that press conference after the game, which again was very depressing. I think. I don't know. One of the things that I think I appreciated was this how much emotion that the coaches and the players felt. Obviously it's the Super Bowl; they want to win it, but I think it's just refreshing to see guys who make that much money playing the game at the highest level like really care and care about their teammates. I think Kyle Juszczyk had a video of him and his press conference that he was in tears basically. So it's just a very depressing experience to be in, and just I'm feeling all those emotions. It's raw for me, and I'm talking to I'm asking questions from them. It's just it was surreal, but it's still experience I'll never forget. But let's talk about the game. Let's dissect it a little bit because as I was saying, I was like I want to get on the pod to talk about it, so I went back and watch the all 22. I haven't watched like the broadcast yet because I hate Tony Romo and I can't really listen to him go on and on about starting a sentence and not knowing where it's going. So I haven't gone to the actual broadcast, but I have watched the all 22, and I have some thoughts. But before we get into that, I just want to say this may have ruined Taylor Swift for me forever. This game. I don't know how you feel about it, Lauren.
Listen, This there were a lot of hard parts to the Niners losing the Super Bowl. One of the things definitely in the top 5 is Taylor Swift is a comfort for me. We're 9 days apart,
Mm.
in age, and I've loved her since I was in high school. I don't wanna age myself too much, but, um, she's been along with, like, every bump in the road for me, and I have not been able to listen to her this week. I did foresee it, and I watched the entire Eras tour on the plane on the way over, so I got a good fix in before,
You're
but
like, this is it.
I
I'm gonna get it all in here. I'm
I
not gonna
just
think about it.
it's hard. I can't listen to her, and normally that's who I would turn to in these dark
Mm.
times.
Yeah, so pray for Niner fans who are also Taylor Swift fans. They're in a very rough predicament right now. Obviously, she didn't partake in the game, contrary to what people actually think. She was just there watching her boyfriend. But I will say, shout out to Brittany Mahomes. Everyone knows I'm a big Brittany Mahomes fan. Good for her getting on the Sports Illustrated shoot. Very happy for the Mahomes
Looks great.
family. A lot of good, upstanding men in the Mahomes family, outside of Patrick,
Yeah.
because they haven't been in the news at all recently. So I just want to get that out of the way as well.
She looked great. What can I say? She looked
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. Good for her, mom of 2,
Yep.
she
Yep.
bounced back real quick, but yeah, I think that's as far as my compliments will go at this
Okay.
point.
Fair enough. Okay. Just two orders of business I just want to get out of the way. But yeah, I think just overall in the actual football, you know, I think it's easier in situations or games or Super Bowl losses where you can really pin this loss on one thing or just a handful of things or one position or one player. And this one, the hardest thing about this is there is no one really to blame. Everyone's to blame, but no
No,
one's to blame because I don't know. I think people are going to go after Kyle and because of his history in the Super Bowls. I watching the tape again, I really don't think it was him at all. I don't think it was really coaching. I think Reed's a better coach, I would say, just tactically on the offensive side, and I think Spagnuolo's a really everyone knows is one of the best defensive coordinators out
yeah,
there. So, but I don't think I mean, again, the score reflected that it was close and it came to overtime and it came down, to the last possession. So I really don't think the coaching was it. Obviously, Brock wasn't the issue. The defense wasn't the issue either. I mean, they held the Chiefs to one
no,
touchdown regulation, held them to 3 points at halftime. The offense, obviously, I think that those three and outs in the third quarter kind of did
yep,
them in,
no,
but it was really the players on the field on both sides that squandered a lot of opportunities and lack of execution, especially the offensive line, which we'll get into. But that's just my overall thought here is that it wasn't one thing, and I think maybe even looking at the Super Bowl 4 years ago, it's those defensive lapses at the end. It's the inability of Garoppolo to
make
perform in,
that
in the
make
clutch
that
and make
throw.
that throw, right? So those things you can point to, but for this one, it just felt like there was a million things, and I think you by your reaction, I think you have a similar
Yeah,
agreement in that.
I feel like a lot of people reached out to me. I mean, obviously, most of my friends know how I feel about this team, and so I had a lot of texts coming in, and I feel like my response has been it was 5 things, and they all seem minor now, but
Yeah,
adding up, I think that's what lost us the game. As you know, I'm a huge Kyle Shanahan fan. I call him Daddy Kyle. I I love him, on him. He controls my emotions more than even my husband does. So, um, it's very hard for me to be critical on him. I think he did a good job. There were obviously things I think he maybe could have done slightly better, but
yeah,
there is no one on this planet that is beating themselves up more than Kyle right now. I think I leading up to the Super Bowl heard a million people say like I just pray Kyle doesn't lose because he is going to make this offseason hell for all of his coaches. Like
yeah,
they're back in the lab
yeah.
the next day. There's no vacation. So yeah, I think it wasn't really just one thing. I think Kyle's kind of been the scapegoat so far. The thing that made me feel the best about the game, and really the only shining light for me, was Purdy looked awesome. Like, I don't care what people are saying. He impressed me more than I thought he would. Did he make every throw? No. But the fact that he looked so poised against that Kansas City defense is something that can't be overlooked. I think I saw that his QBR was an 80,
Hmm.
75, somewhere around there.
Sure.
And if you look at Kansas City in the rest of the playoffs, these elite quarterbacks that everyone considers elites were in the 40s
Yeah.
against this defense.
Yeah.
And I just think that's something that can't be overlooked. I'm super excited about. But yeah, it was a lot of lapses in other areas that were minor, but a 3-point overtime game is where those are like really seen and
Yeah.
magnified.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's a perfect point, and one that I wanted to bring up earlier is the fact that, you know, under the Jimmy Garoppolo years, that you knew that there was always
It
this
was the
feeling that,
weakness.
yes, there
Yeah.
was always this feeling. I mean, when he was on, and he was good for the offense. They ran really smoothly, but when it got to the postseason, you're like, when is he going to make that throw, that one or two throws where he's just going to give it to the other team for really no reason. There's no pass
Yeah.
rush. He just makes the wrong read or throws the wrong ball, and it goes to the other team. With Purdy, it never felt that way, and it hasn't really felt that way ever really in his career. I mean, obviously, he had a couple games this season where I think he just tried to do a lot and they were behind, and I
Yeah.
think he made some bad throws. But I mean, this game, I never felt like anything was too much for him. I mean, there was pressure in his face almost constantly. The O line, like I said, had a ton of lapses at different
Yep.
moments, but he never looked like this was, you know, the lights were too bright. And like you said, a great point as well. This is a really good Kansas City defense. This is one of the best. I mean, defenses they've had since Patrick Mahomes has
Yeah.
been there, but also just defenses in the league. I think this year, I think they had some injuries early in the year. Maybe they struggled a little bit, but they always held opponents to low scores. So it was really the offense that kind of struggled when the team struggled at times. I think the defense has always been there for them this year, and they were as advertised. I mean, they
Oh
were
yeah.
solid. I mean, just as I expected them to play, they were solid, disciplined. On the defensive side, really sticky in coverage in the secondary. Played a ton of man. I know Brock talked about that in his post game, and that made it tough because I mean, watching the tape, the 49ers receivers, Ayuk, Devo, Kittle, even they barely got any separation on any of the plays.
None.
McDuffie. I know we'll talk about 95 Chris Jones in a second, but McDuffie, I think behind Chris Jones might have been the player on the defensive side that was their best one. I think he could have been the MVP of the Super Bowl. Just the way every time Debo ran a route, he was right there, and he never gave him any separation. I know he made a bunch of plays defending passes, but I was just so impressed by what I saw from McDuffie, just specifically. But I mean, their defense was as expected. Didn't give the 49ers any really room in the passing situations. Obviously, Chris Jones, made his plays, so you expected that as well. But I mean, so was their offense. They started real slow. They can stall out at
Yeah.
times. They are like sloppy in ball security. I mean, they give the ball and put it on the turf all the time. They were, I think, lucky that the Niners only recovered one of those fumbles, really, because they had a ton in this game. But in the end, they have Patrick Mahomes, they have Travis Kelsey, and they have Andy Reid to call the plays, and that's really just Mahomes just outlasts you. I think he's been in these moments before, and not saying I don't think the Niners were prepared for it, but I think the Chiefs just know better. Given just that they've been in it every year, the Super Bowl, I think the thing that I forgot when I got there is the commercial breaks are so long, and I go to football games,
Time is
yeah, exactly. It's just totally
twice as
different.
long. Yeah.
Yep, yep.
It's a
So,
totally different thing. The rules are different.
yep, yeah,
Like,
yeah. Even
it's
but even just the breaks between possessions,
yeah.
right? Usually in a normal football game, you have a break at the kickoff or a new possession every once in a while, but every single punt, especially early on, like it was a changeover and it was like 5 minutes, so it's just like you got to keep that adrenaline going throughout the game. And I think the Chiefs just they knew it was going to be a long afternoon, so I think they kind of, especially Mahomes, and I'll say last thing I'll say on him is, I saw him early in the game. They were trying to take shots, and I think he just knew it was going to be a long day, and he trusted his defense more than in the past. He just wasn't willing to take those shots if they weren't wide open.
Yeah.
He took that long one to Hardman early, and got a little lucky with Tayshaun not seeing the ball, but.
Yep.
I saw a stark difference between Mahomes in the first half, tucking the ball. The Niners got a few sacks on him. They got a little more pressure, but he wasn't trying to give the ball away. And then the second half, you saw it. He wanted to throw it downfield, so he threw the pick, and then he just started playing his game and getting guys open. So it was just a very different two halves that I saw from Mahomes.
He's obviously always been an elite player. He's had an insane amount of talent. I think this year, what I've seen, and I think he mentioned this in a press conference too, he's learned how to be a game manager
Yeah,
better and
yeah,
not how to always be the hero. And I think that's what won them the game in this case. And that's what scared me. All of my friends were like, oh, don't you feel great? This is amazing. And I'm like, we've seen this story. We've seen this story before. I will not feel good until that whistle blows and the Niners are holding up the Lombardi
yeah,
trophy. So
yeah,
I think, so many props to him. Obviously, he didn't have, his normal MVP, Super Bowl MVP numbers, but I think there's a lot more to the story than this budget. You can see that he knew what he was doing. Andy
yeah.
Reid knew what he was doing. I don't think Travis Kelsey knew what he was doing when he was yelling at Reid on the sideline, but I think he figured it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I can see why he was frustrated. He only had one catch for 1 yard, like a little screen pass in the first half, and he wasn't really target. I don't think he was targeted at all outside of that. So I get his frustration, but I was watching just the 49ers secondary. They they were very much intentional about bracketing Travis Kelsey, but also just keeping two safeties back, keeping their DBs back, dropping their linebackers deep, and kind of leaving the underneath stuff open, but really covering those deeper routes because they knew Kansas City coming in wanted to be aggressive there. And Mahomes, to his credit, did not take the bait, did not try to force things downfield, stayed patient, knew that they get their opportunities, and they just found what they needed to do in the second half to get Kelsey open. And I know we can mention it here, but I mean I am heartbroken for Dre Greenlaw. I mean that was the toughest part for
Sick to my
me.
stomach.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then the
And I
players were
think that
too.
was honestly, that could have been the game right there.
Yep,
You don't want to pin it on one person. And, um, you know, that is a freak accident.
yep,
I I mean, I've seen all the players' reactions to it on both sides, and I think he could have been the game changer in some things, and he was so riled up in the
yeah,
best way possible. I mean, that was one of the things we noticed the most with defense was like he is locked in. He wants to
yep.
win this. He wants to get his boys to like be as jacked up as he can. When he went out, I got that sinking feeling of like that could be the difference in the game. I think also Hufunga earlier in the season
Yeah,
could have maybe been the difference in the game, even though I
yeah,
feel like his was it Brown?
yeah, Jair, yeah,
Brown is playing
yep,
amazing. But you know, the injuries have been the Niners' kryptonite, and this felt like one of the first times that we've had a solid team. And
yep,
seeing Greenlaw go down, I think was heartbreaking for not only the team's morale, but like he's just amazing. He's just the guy.
yeah.
That was hard to watch.
Yeah, no, and the players were obviously, I think you just see the reactions from them, and then you talk to them. It's just like he's a huge part of, I think people have made the comparisons to Draymond on the Warriors this year, and I think he just has that same sort of spirit and intensity that he brings on the defensive side and playing next to Fred. I mean, obviously those two are brothers; they're inseparable. So it
Yeah.
just broke my heart seeing that. But also, yeah, I mean, tactically he bring the tangibles. He has so much speed at the linebacker spot. You know, could he have covered Kelsey better in the second half? Probably. Would that have made a difference in the game, in the outcome? Who knows? I don't know, but I think that
Yeah.
was definitely big. Just having that speed. I mean, Oren Burks came in, played a great game. Really, I mean, honestly, I can't say
Yeah.
anything
A
bad
great
about
game.
Oren. Yeah,
Yeah.
and he stepped in and he played well and it made some tackles, but he just doesn't have the same speed as Dre does, and that's just a reality. So maybe having him on some of those crossers, different Kelsey routes, maybe Dre makes some plays and gets in the way of things and just makes maybe more plays downhill. But yeah, I mean, like you said, he came out. I've never seen him so fired up before to start a game and just
Never.
flying everywhere. So I mean, that was big. That was big. I know I had to bring that
Yeah.
up, but it's the intangibles, right? It's just his energy that he brings and that sort of thing, just to lift people up. So that I mean, it can't be understated how significant that was just from the energy and morale standpoint, but also tactically as well. So that was really really tough. But again, like you said, The Niners, this has been the more healthy than they've ever been. So I can't really
Ever.
complain on that part. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think that was big to me. I think the last like kind of general point I'll make just from watching it, I think it just this game sort of it underscores a point to me that I think we sort of learned throughout this year. We've been 49er fans have been spoiled with Robert Sala and D'Amico Ryans as the defensive coordinator. And I don't know if this is necessarily all on Steve Wilkes, but you have to cause chaos. You have to switch up and bring pressure
Yeah.
um, on the defensive front to cause some sort of just make the quarterback you know confused, get him off of his throwing platform. And I know Mahomes can make plays off platform, but I just didn't see enough of that this year from the 49ers in terms of bringing extra
Yeah.
pressure. I think they were too reliant on the four guys up front, relying on Bosa and Chase Young just to get pressure on their own. And you need to bring extra guys. You need to make stunts. You need to do something different on the defensive front to make a real impact. And I don't think the Niners did enough of that this year. I mean, obviously they improved in the secondary, and that's what Wilkes specializes in. But when you pay all that money to that defensive front, they need to produce. And I think obviously they're they sort of relied on just the raw talent from those four and from Armstead, like I said, Bosa, Chase Young, and Hargrave. But I think they just need a little bit extra there. And I think that might be, and that was a big
Yeah.
difference between how Spagnuolo runs that defense. He's always bringing pressure. I mean, there were many critical moments where that bringing that extra pressure probably decided the game. So that was just my last thought, just defensively from the 49ers as well.
Listen, I thought they looked great in the first half. I was not expecting that. I thought, they got to Patrick Mahomes more than I anticipated that they were going to, and I was
Mhm.
really impressed with that. Now, and we'll talk about the Steve Wilkes thing
Yeah.
more and how I'm not entirely surprised, but in general, I feel like he rested too heavily on just the overwhelming talent that this
Yeah.
defense had. I
Yeah.
mean, if you compare the Chiefs defense is amazing, but the big names are on the Niners side. I
Yeah.
mean, if you ask people who they know, they're going to be able to name more defensive players on the Niners than the Chiefs. And that's not always an indication of talent, but they have a stacked roster. And especially in the playoffs, it's been, very disappointed with their output. And so yeah, I was really impressed in the first half. I wasn't fully expecting it, but you could tell that Shanahan wasn't fully bought in. I mean, he called that timeout in the second half purely to be like, "You're whatever you're scheming up here, it's not going to work. I'm telling you no." Um, and that was kind of when I was like, "Oh, that's not a good sign. I'm a little worried." And also, is he going to have a job when
Yeah.
this is all done? So yeah, it was really great to see some of the big players step up. I mean, with Chase Young, there's been a lot in the media about his like lack of trying. And
Hmm.
I think he looked great. Armstead's been hurt on and off. And so seeing him get some really big plays was
Played
great. And seeing
played through a torn
Hargrave,
meniscus over the last couple of
yeah,
weeks. Armstead did. So
yeah,
shout out to him.
yeah, amazing, amazing stuff. So again, I think there was some lacking in the defense at the end of the game,
Yeah.
but overall they surpassed my expectations going into the game of what I thought was going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, obviously holding the Chiefs to one touchdown in regulation and all of the red zone stops that they made. They got two turnovers. I mean, literally did the things that I said that they had to do to give them a
To-
chance, and they did it. And I think it
yeah,
just came down to just lack of execution in key moments, mostly on the offensive side. But the defense, and you can't complain with how they played. I mean, they played absolutely well enough to win.
you can't complain, and you never want to get into blaming the officiating fully for
Hmm.
an outcome of the game, but as you watch things more, hey, every team there is offensive holding.
Hmm.
It's always going to happen where those are missed. The refs can't be everywhere. I was a little surprised that there wasn't one offensive holding call,
Yeah.
especially with Nick Bosa calling that out, 2 weeks prior, I guess a week prior during media day. Listen, you can't put blame on that fully, but there were some pretty egregious bear hug offensive holding calls that would have swayed the game slightly differently. But I like to keep that out of it because I think a lot of people were putting blame on Moody for missing the extra point. I think Mahomes would have figured out how to score a touchdown on that last drive. I
Hmm.
honestly don't think that changed too much, in my opinion. But again, it's one of those games where if you add up five things, that could be the game changer there. And I think the lack of offensive holding definitely, you know, it hurts. It hurts now.
Yeah, no, it definitely does, and that's why I went back to look. I'm like, okay, how many times could they have called something? And there are a couple here or there where okay, maybe they could have threw a flag, maybe they shouldn't. And obviously Trent Williams got flagged for one early in the game, and that was a big penalty that drove them backwards. And that was even a borderline call. He grabbed a little bit of
Yeah.
jersey when Brock was rolling out and scrambling. And sure, that's a holding. But yeah, the fact that the Chief, if that's getting called, then the fact that the Chiefs didn't
If
get
that's getting called, yeah.
a
It's
number of
like that's
plays.
what kills you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And it's the same crew from 4 years ago. So I sort of expected that coming in. They don't like throwing flags. So it was just I don't know. It just something that I knew was going to come. But there was one play, and the one I saw on film, I think it was the most egregious was I think it was 4th and 10 or 3rd and 10 on the last drive, 10 minutes left. And Bosa coming on the right side and literally got his head in the classic Bosa headlock that he gets in, and Mahomes gets a big 3rd and 10 completion. I think that was the first one to Kelsey before the long one
Yep.
at the end. This was just to tie the game at 16, but get a 10-yard penalty there, and maybe the Chiefs don't even tie it up yet. Maybe the Niners go in and
It
go up two
changes
scores.
things.
So
Yeah.
that was the
Yeah.
biggest one to me. And again, not going to say that the rest lost in the game, but there
No.
were some moments there where they could have benefited from some calls, and it just didn't happen.
Yeah. That play in particular, my husband Ben was screaming at the TV. I mean, I call hold. I'm always calling that there's holding
Yeah.
going on. I think too much. I'm definitely like the boy who cried wolf with holding. But he rarely does. And
Yeah.
he was screaming at the TV, like, how is that not a hold? And it's such a big one.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. Again,
That,
I will say I never want to put it fully on the refs. But I was surprised just because there's been a lot of spotlight on
yeah.
that particular call and the lack of it getting called.
Yeah,
So
that was the one. I mean, I'm sort of like you. I like to see, those holding calls get called on my guys because I think just generally watch him play every week. I think he gets held. Bosa does more
more,
times than it gets
more
called,
than
obviously. And you can't call it every play, I guess, but that was
yeah,
the one where I felt like that was a pretty blatant hold, and it just
yeah,
didn't get called. The ref was in position, didn't make the call. So that was the one. But I don't know. I mean, should we go through just the main thing? I know you brought up the special teams, and maybe we could talk about that
yeah.
now. It's just
I'm
again,
happy to talk through the
yeah.
special teams. I'm very passionate about this.
And again, this is like
Like
something where
every
Moody,
year.
you can blame Moody, and you expected
No,
coming in that this is a rookie. He had been shaky all year. He had a pretty solid rookie year just in terms of rookie
yeah,
standards for a kicker. And you just figured maybe he was going to make the mistake, but he had a Super Bowl record that obviously was Bucker that broke it, within the next quarter, I guess. 254 plus yard field goals to keep the
yeah,
Niners afloat. I mean, I got to hand it to him for doing that. I mean, that's just impressive. So he gave you the yin and the yang. He missed the extra point, probably would have missed. I don't know. It seemed pretty low to me and it got blocked, but
yeah,
those are the big ones there. But yeah, and obviously the muff punt that went off Darrell Luter's ankle and I guess people have talked about it. I
yeah,
know that was
yeah.
really. I think if you picked one play that everything
One
swung on, that was it.
I as a Niners fan, I just feel like we've struggled on special teams or we've had a cursed special
Bad
teams
history.
for so long.
Bad history.
And every time we have a punt return, a kick return, I hold my breath.
Hmm.
And, and on both sides, I'm always worried that, the other team's going to run it back for a touchdown. And I'm always worried we're going to drop it because
Yeah.
we've seen this. We've seen the same film over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And so like watch most games with my husband. He is now scarred because I'm such a crazy person when I watch these games. But for years, he was like, "Calm down" during the punt returns, and I'm
Yeah.
like, "I can't." We've lost out on Super Bowls because of this, going all the way back to the the Harbaugh era.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
been
Kyle Williams.
several. Yes, exactly. And so when that happened, I was just like, okay, injury, we've had now the like all the things that I stress as a fan happened in that
Hmm.
game, and that was just truly the cherry on the top. I mean, it's a freak thing. I mean, it hitting off of the guy's ankle, that
Yep.
almost never happens.
Yep.
But it was my nightmare come to
Yeah.
life.
No, it was crazy. I mean, just it makes it all more frustrating considering how many times the Chiefs put the ball on the turf and got the ball back, or lost the ball out of her hands and got it back. I mean, and just to have Richie James on the other side, and him almost lose a muff
Yeah,
punt as well, and literally just drop one, but got it right back to himself, just makes it that much more frustrating. So, and
yeah.
Ray Ray's been actually one of the most solid punt returners we've had,
He's been great.
and it
Yeah,
again, it wasn't really his fault. I mean, he tried to
it
call the
wasn't.
Peter. I'm sure Daryl didn't hear it. And it really just goes off your ankle. And then, people say he should have just fell on it, but I really think he was just trying to get it, and he just didn't get it in his hands. So yeah, that was, and, obviously the Chiefs scoring the next play. I
I
mean,
wouldn't
that
want to
was
be
really the swing.
him. I wouldn't want to be him in that moment.
Yeah.
Obviously,
Yeah.
watching back, you're like, oh, why did you not fall on it? But
Yeah.
you're not there in the moment. You don't know.
Yeah.
It, yeah, Ray Ray's been great. I think we've just been burned
Yeah.
by this so many times that
It
I'm
keeps
always
happening.
nervous when.
Time is a flat
Yeah,
circle, as they
yeah.
say.
That was the biggest momentum shift too,
Yeah.
and I'm totally one for momentum shifts. I mean, I think we saw it in the Lions game. I think it's this like powerful outside being of a thing that can change games very, very quickly, and it definitely was the turning point in the
Yeah.
game for the Chiefs.
Yeah, even just considering, I mean, that happened right after or during the Niners were having three straight three and outs in the third quarter. So I mean, it couldn't have gone worse just in that frame.
Yeah,
Again, if you had to pick one frame, and that was it. That third quarter and how they performed there was everything.
yeah,
It sucks because that was the defense's most dominant quarter.
yeah.
Holding the
It
Chiefs to three
was,
points,
and
getting an interception. Yep.
yeah, I think going back to Moody as well. Uh, he's gotten a lot of flack this season, and we've been very spoiled as Niners fans to have very reliable veteran kickers. Now, they didn't have a huge leg, which I think what Kyle was looking for here.
Yeah.
And I think there's some trade-offs to both. Um, but yeah, I mean, he's a rookie. I think he did as well as I could have expected him to do. He, missed in some big time spots, but otherwise, I mean, it's what Kyle wanted. He
Yeah.
wanted the big leg, and there's some trade-offs with that
Yeah.
sometimes.
This was the fun fact. This was the first Super Bowl ever where there was zero kick return yards. Because both kickers kicked it out of the end zone every time. Yeah.
Which I
So
pray for
yeah,
every
exactly.
time, isn't it? I'm like, just do that, please.
Yeah.
And that's so interesting. I
Yeah.
did not see that. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
well,
Yeah,
the fun thing about being on the media side is you get those like Super Bowl record emails from NFL PR, and that was one of them. Very obscure, but just a fun fact that there were no kick return yards in this Super Bowl. So no team. It wasn't really a factor for either team. So,
no,
but I will
yeah,
say on the kicking thing, the last thought there. I mean, Harrison Butker, I think you have to give him so much credit for how great of a kicker he really is. I mean, obviously, when you
yeah,
think of great kickers in this league, you think of Justin Tucker, but I think number two behind him, I think easy for me is Butker. I mean, he has been as
great.
solid as they come, especially in the postseason when it matters most. He's
Yeah,
hit every kick. He had a 57-yarder Super Bowl record in this one. So just impressive all around for Harrison Butker. He's a great kicker. So I thought he deserved a shout out for that. I think the CMC fumble really set the tone for how things were gonna go.
they looked
This
so good on that
Yeah,
drive.
the
Like
scripted drive was good. Yeah.
unstoppable was feeling so good. I mean, you so CMC had the other fumble on the 1 yard line earlier in the season. And
He had one other in
the
Minnesota
thing
on the
is
first drive too. So that it was
that's
his
right.
third
Yeah,
third
yeah, yeah.
fumble and
His
331
third,
carries this year.
yeah. And you're like, what can you do? Like, I'll take 3 fumbles.
Yeah.
I wish it wasn't in the Super Bowl. I wish it wasn't on the first drive where what were they getting? 9 yards
Yeah.
per?
Yep. 46 yards on 4 plays to start the game, and that was the fifth play.
Yeah. And they looked unstoppable. I think, going into midway through the second quarter, we should have been up 21-0. Like it very, very easily 17-0. I think maybe it would have
Yeah.
also taken. Um, so that was tough. And he was held to 80 yards in that game,
Yeah,
roughly.
so he had
Is
80
that,
yards rushing, only like 3 yards of carry. I think he had another 80 receiving as well. So he had he had a really good game objectively. And he was impactful,
yeah,
but the Chiefs just made sure. I think the one explosive play he had was on the overtime possession where he had that
yep.
long pass play basically. And that
Okay.
was mostly they just held him in check the entire game, made him earn all the yards that he got.
Yeah, it's tough. I truly think CMC was the MVP of the year. I think we wouldn't have made it to the Super Bowl without
Yeah.
him. I think he's allowed to make a mistake every so often. I don't think it was our nail in the coffin, but I think that the game might have looked different if we went up 7-0 to begin with
Yeah.
and then maybe 14-0. And that's harder to climb out of. But again, I really just think Patrick Mahomes always finds a way. He just doesn't like to lose the Super Bowl. And the only one that really has stopped him is Brady. And so,
And Burrow. Yeah,
yeah.
and before that, yeah. So before the Super Bowl, so yeah, Brady and Burrow.
Yep.
You got to be one of those two guys, I guess. Yeah, it's hard to beat Patrick Mahomes. You got to make the most of your opportunities. The Niners definitely didn't do that, especially on offense. So, that started with the fumble. Second drive, it starts with a big 18-yarder to Ayuk, and then you get the false start on Trent, and then a holding on Trent Williams. So you go 15 yards back on second down, and that takes away that whole drive. Then you get the next couple
Yep.
drives. They're trying to get the deep passes to Ayuk. Casey's really on it. The Chiefs were taking away those deep shots, and I think Kyle wanted to be aggressive, and and Purdy wants to be aggressive as well. So I think they did a good job of taking those away. The Rashee Rice fumble on that third down play right into the hands of Watson. That was tough. Obviously they ended up fumbling it. What's his name? Pacheco did later in that drive,
Yep.
but that play, had it gone into the Niners' hands, we're flip field position, and Casey wouldn't even got the
Yep.
big pass play in the next possession. So it's just like those little things right there that were big. I have it's just kind of like a stream of consciousness, but then you sub in Burford for Feliciano, and they were rotating guys at right guard, and he came back in later. That was I think a sign that you don't really trust your offensive line when you're still rotating a really young guard who started a lot of games last year with another guy who just came over. I think they just weren't confident in either one of those, and we'll talk about those third down plays in a second, but just some other things I noticed is again McDuffie, like I said, was keeping, the coverage was right there with Debo the entire time. Um, you know, I don't know. It's just like in the three third and outs in the third quarter. I think we'll go there because those were the big plays to me. That those big possessions where obviously you get the interception on the first three plays into the second half. Jair Brown kind of jumps in front of a ball that I think Mahomes was trying to lead Kelsey a little bit. If not, he was trying to
Yeah.
go to Hardman down the sideline. Jair makes a great play, gets in front of it, and then you get your 1st and 10 on the Kansas City 44-yard line. They try to set up. They have a boot to Purdy coming out right. They try to set up a big play. McCaffrey was wide open on the other side of the field.
Mhm.
For I think they were setting something up with him because Juszczyk was leaking out to the left side to sort of lead block for him. And for some reason, well, not for some reason, he got pressured because Chris Jones went away from where the offensive line was trying to block him, came back and got pressure in Purdy's face, and he had to throw it away, basically. But he actually throws it to Jawan, who catches the ball, and they lose 8 yards on first down. So it's like those
Yep.
plays like that where they have something set up, and then Jawan catches a pass that you should just literally just knock to the ground and take the
Yep.
L. It's just those are the plays that frustrate you. Then that sets the drive back. They're 8 yards back, and that screws everything up. Then it's the next series where you have in the first play, Pennell blows up a McCaffrey run on the first down, no gain. Then Purdy misses a wide open Debo Samuel on the crosser. He's trying to get Ayuk on the out route, and it's just like I think that was one of the two misses that I saw Purdy have that made a big impact
Yeah.
because had he completed it there, maybe they get some momentum going, get a first down, shake off the nerves, and keep things going. But that was one where I think he just loves Ayuk so much he wanted to get it over to him. And then I think that they got one-on-one with Kittle on a third down, and they took that shot, but again, Purdy got some pressure in his face, and I think that was kind of the theme
Yeah.
in the second half is he never really was comfortable throwing. So I think those again. I mean, I don't know what you were seeing when you saw those three and outs, but for me, I'm like thinking to myself when I watched those three possessions, knowing what the score was, knowing what the situation was, I'm like, this is really gonna come back to bite them that they did not take advantage of these opportunities.
100%. There felt like there were so many missed opportunities that I think if we had just gotten one of those, it would have made a big difference. Uh, you've obviously watched more of the tape than I have. I mean, as just someone that was a bystander, I mean, obviously you're like, run it once. I totally understand why that's a narrative that's going on. I also understand the counterpoint to that of like, it might not have worked very well. Like Kyle was seeing things that as a viewer, I probably wasn't
Yeah.
seeing. I wish he would have maybe run it once in there. I mean, I think like 2 yards is better than us going back. It just felt like we kept getting pushed back
Yeah.
to 2nd and 15 over and over again, and that you can't run it at that point. You have to throw it. The Our O line was not doing everything they need to do. I could go on and on about how I think that it's really unfair that Purdy doesn't get more props for having a shaky O line. I
Yeah.
mean, Trent's amazing. He will go down as one of the greatest at his position, but
Mhm.
that O line was letting him down in a lot of ways. And yeah, I totally agree with your assessment there. The third quarter was, I expected the third quarter to be what I expected the fourth quarter to look more like the third quarter.
Sure.
Usually, I feel like we come out pretty strong in the
Yeah.
third quarter, and we just couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing.
It was deflating to say the least. But they got their opportunities. They had that great drive with Jawan, getting the end
Yep.
zone and then going back ahead. I mean, Purdy, say what you want. Again, I think we both are impressed by him, but he had a touchdown drive, field goal drive to take the lead again. And then the field goal drive in overtime. I mean, those last three drives that he had, I mean, he did what he needed to do. And then we'll talk about. I think this last like kind of minutia of the game I want to talk about is those two, third down opportunities. The one on the last drive of regulation for the 49ers where they kicked the field goal to go ahead and take a 19-16 lead. It was 2 minutes left in the game. I think it was third and five about on the plus side
Hmm.
around the Chiefs 43 or so. Um, it was just I think that was one of the bigger plays to me. Third and five in the Kansas City 35 actually, and it sets
35.
up the long
Yeah.
field goal. But Kansas City again, like they always do, brings a great disguised pressure. Niners don't pick it up on the left side, forces an early throw from Purdy that gets tipped, but right off the line, they didn't recognize where the blitz was coming from. It was on Ayuk's guy. He turns, he's wide open on a slant. Would have been an easy first down. The Niners could have milked more clock, at least make Kansas City burn those timeouts, and
Yep.
maybe kicked a field goal to win the game, and that would have been it. But it's a missed read from Brock and a missed I guess protection from the O line that was a
I mean,
significant play.
at that point, you're in fourth down territory. Let me know if I'm wrong on that. If that's too risky for me. If you are 3rd and 5, and I know it's been kind of going back and forth how well the Kansas City defense was plugging up the run,
Mhm.
but I was just shocked that he was willing to throw it with giving Patrick Mahomes 2 minutes
Yeah,
is the scariest thing in the world for me. I mean, I'm shocked he
yeah.
didn't score a touchdown on that. I thought for
So,
sure
so you were
game over.
saying
He's going to score a
You're saying
touchdown.
run the ball on third down and try to take a shot fourth down as well, or at least make them use a timeout there. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, basically, because in my head, you giving Patrick Mahomes, you going up, kicking a field goal,
Yeah.
you giving him 2 minutes to score a touchdown, like it was game over in my mind. And
Yeah.
again, I'm shocked that he just went
Made
to
it
go
stop.
kick the field goal. Very
Made it stop.
thankful for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought it was fourth down territory, and I was surprised that he didn't try to run it and then you know try to
Yeah.
get Andy Reid to use more of his timeouts.
Yeah, yeah. You could second guess that decision. I think they just wanted to make sure they took the points. But I think just that miss alone. I mean, he Ayuk was so open watching the tape there again, and
Yeah.
just I think kind of a combination O line and Purdy just not reading that correctly. I think again, Chiefs credit to the Chiefs for disguising that. And then the last thing, that third
Yep.
down in overtime, 3rd and 4 from the Kansas City 9-yard line. Um, Big breakdown in pass protection. I don't know if you saw on Twitter the Feliciano and Burford thing. I think somebody was calling out McKivitz for not making that block on Chris Jones and kind of just leaving him wide open with a straight path to
Yep.
Purdy. Turns out it was probably Burford's man. Burford goes down. I was watching the tape. He goes down and blocks inside instead of keeping his outside free and blocking Chris Jones. So whoever's fault it was, it is a breakdown in the pass protection by the O line. You have Jawan Jennings on a kind of Edelman route, as I call it. You go in and go out. He came open, wide open, and obviously Purdy couldn't get the ball down to hit him. But Ayuk on the backside, nobody was on it. I think his defender fell
No.
down. He was wide open in the back of the end zone as well. So you have two options there that if Purdy gets a second more of time, even half a second, there's no doubt in my mind the Niners score a
You
touchdown
make
there. And
it.
hey, maybe the Chiefs go down, score a touchdown, maybe they get a 2-point conversion and win
Touchdown.
the game. But it's just like, getting a touchdown there just makes all the difference. And they, again, that's
Yep.
the last big opportunity they squandered in this game.
Very curious from your perspective because I feel like a lot of what we've heard too is that the Niners didn't know the rules. I question that.
Yeah. The decision to take the ball first.
It was the right decision in the moment. And I knew the rules. I mean, they were flashing them on the screen, so it
Hmm.
was hard not to know the rules. I thought he was setting up for, again, the third possession, knowing that, hey, it's Mahomes. He'll probably
Yeah.
go and score a touchdown.
Yeah.
I feel confident in my guys. I mean, at that point, when the game ended, I started crying. Like when the game regulation ended, I
Yeah.
started crying because I was like, "We're not winning in overtime," and everyone was like, "Why? The game's not over. Why are you crying?" And I'm like, "Oh, because I know we're not. Like it's Patrick Mahomes. He loves
No.
overtime."
No.
So I thought it was the right decision. Obviously, he's getting a lot of flack for it. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think his reasoning was fine. I know he didn't say this was part of the decision, but the defense was just on the field, so I think that maybe just a
Hmm.
factor of giving them a little bit of a rest. My whole thing is you got to make a defensive stop anyway. So like I don't know, you might as well get the ball
Agreed.
first and make a play and make a
Yeah.
score and put some pressure on their offense. Like I know they're going to be aggressive. I understand that if you score, whether it's a field goal or a touchdown, it's you're already dictating what they have to do on offense, the other team. So I get that. But I think the fact that you could get a or get a second possession after the other team scores to tie it potentially, I think they made that decision based on just that outcome. It's like that they would have the ball
Yeah.
potentially for the last possession to go and end the game. And I think that's solid. And I think again, I think people have said it. I think there's pros and cons on both sides. I understand
Yeah.
the argument of,
Yeah.
deferring and kicking it away. I understand the arguments of receiving it, but I think based on just that fact alone on that third down, they had a play to get in the end zone. I think it was the right decision. I mean, they had it there, for the taking that they just didn't take that chance. And I understand not going for it on fourth down there because you're not going to come away with no points there and just let Patrick Mahomes all
Yeah.
he needs is a field goal. I mean, the game's over if you don't get
Yeah.
that. So you got to get
Yeah.
yourself a chance. And again, comes down to you have to make a stop anyway, and they just weren't able to do that. So that's kind of my thoughts on
Yeah.
that. I think people are going to be questioning that decision for a long time, but at the end of the day, I think the theme that we talked about, it was the players not making the plays. So I think that's what it came down to.
Yeah. It was football at the highest level.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when something is played at the highest level like that with questionably one of the greatest players to ever play at his position, little mistakes are going to add up. So I don't think it was one huge thing. I think it was a bunch of little things because you can't give Patrick Mahomes even one small
Yeah.
thing to
Yeah.
go off of.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I think we went through all the big
Yeah.
plays situations in this one. That there were many, as we said. I think the last thing for me, just the one thing I think, just stylistically, schematically, on offense that I think I could critique Kyle on, and obviously I am not an NFL coach, but the one thing that I noticed on tape when the Niners had a when they win the bunch, when they had a bunch of receivers bunched up on one side, they were more effective at getting open down the field because it forced Kansas City to play off a little bit more with their DBs, who
Hmm.
are obviously very physical. Like I said, very sticky in coverage, playing really close man coverage, didn't let the Niners receivers get open a little more. I would have liked Kyle to go to more of those plays, at least give their receivers a little better of a chance to get open. And just have a little more cushion coming off the line. I feel like that would have been effective. I feel like if you're in a situation that they found themselves in where the receivers just weren't getting any separation, help them out. And I think that's something
Yeah.
that, conversely, that the Chiefs do very well is they give their receivers, they put them in situations where it allows them to get easy yards downfield without getting harassed by the DBs. And obviously the Niners, their scheme is they play off a little bit more in coverage and they're not super press heavy. But for the Chiefs, it's just like Andy Reid just schemes things up where it's take the easy yards. Let's get this
Yep.
guy in motion. Yeah, obviously the touchdown to win the game was one of those where you have a guy coming back in motion and sprinting out back. And it just makes it a tough play in the DBs. And it's just like those little things that maybe Kyle and the Niners could have done a little bit better just to get guys open when you're in a game where the guys just aren't getting open
Yep.
just one on one with DBs. Give them something where you have somebody running in, trying to get a pick on them, or just putting them in bunch where they have a little more room off the line. So that's just one thing I think maybe it would have made a difference in getting more possessions where they could have scored more.
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely think sometimes he gets a little too into his head. And again, he's a genius.
Yeah.
I don't want to give him any tips or tricks,
Yeah.
but I definitely could see it on his face. He definitely had the most pressure going into that Super Bowl of anyone.
Yeah.
He really wanted to win bad, and I think he overcomplicated things and then simplified things too much sometimes. But I don't, of all the people, I don't blame him. It's a hard job. It's yeah, there's some missed
Yeah.
opportunities for sure.
All right. Yeah, well, this one's gonna hurt for a long time, just as the other ones will.
This was the worst. This
Yeah.
was the worst one for sure. I
Because
think
it felt
we were
like this was their best chance, Lauren. It felt like this
this
year
was
more than
this was
any other ones was.
I think that's what hurts the most about, kind of all of their Super Bowls is we're like, this was the year. This was the year. They had the team. This one hurt more than 2000, I would say.
Hmm.
Um, just because this team was so elite and so good. And it went into overtime. I was trying to come up with the most painful Super Bowl losses, like of all time, not just
Yeah.
of the 49ers. And I think number one has got to be the Titans. They've never gone back. That was inches.
Yeah.
That's hard to move past.
Yeah.
I hate to say it. I think this one, the Niners, you could go back and forth for me. The Niners could be number two. They could be number three, the Super Bowl. You could interchange them out with the Seahawks throwing the interception on the 1 yard line.
Yeah.
The only reason I could argue that's definitely a more painful thing, but they had won the year before. So I
Yeah.
feel less,
Yeah.
I never feel bad for Seahawks fans. I say that if my Seahawks fans friends are listening, I'm sorry. I always feel bad for you guys. But no, I really feel bad for them. But those are in my mind are like the top three at least since I've been alive.
Yeah, I
For
mean
sure.
Falcons 28-3. I think that's another one that's just got to be up there. But again, it's Tom
Yeah.
Brady on the other side. So I mean, this one, at least the one thing that gives me solace in these last two losses, knowing that you're losing to one of the, probably he's gonna end up being the best quarterback of all time.
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
Yeah. Yep.
But I mean, at the same time, the flip side is like you get a total of 3 interceptions off of him in the 2 games, and you're up
He didn't
10
have a great
points in
game.
both. Yep, yeah, and it's just
Yeah.
like that. So that hurts as
Yeah.
well. So it's just like the yin and yang of it, like I said. So yeah, this one hurts. I mean, they had a great chance to win against Baltimore 11 years ago. Didn't do that. It's just the manner in which they've lost these last three, the
Loss
ones in my
is
lifetime,
so
is tough.
bad. Yeah, I
So
mean, I think Bill Simmons said that he now puts Kyle Shanahan with Detroit fans and Browns fans. Like just Kyle
just
Shanahan
him.
alone has had more
uh,
pain, according to him. I don't always agree with him, but I thought that one. I don't know. That made me feel a little bit better about my sadness this week.
Yeah, no, I feel bad for Kyle. I know he wants it hard.
Yeah,
So I mean, again, I think let's talk about going forward. As you have to do
yeah,
in the NFL, you got to keep moving forward. I think that one of the things that I think, again, I can rest on is a little bit is, you never know if they're going to be back there. That's the thing about the Super Bowl and just having these opportunities. You never know if they're going to have it again. But at least on paper, this team seems set up to have some success, at
yep,
least for the next year ish. before they
Yep.
have to extend Brock, because maybe that cuts into
Yep.
the salary elsewhere. So really next year
I just
might
don't
be the
think
last.
he's gonna ask for that large of a contract. I feel like he's gonna be a 20-25 million dollar guy.
Yeah, I
And
mean,
that's
I think
just me.
it's really going to
Yeah.
depend on how he does next year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
if he's in the MVP conversation again, I think he'll command a little bit more, because that's just
Yep.
how the market goes for quarterback. It always keeps going up, and the next guy getting paid is going to make that much money. I mean, does he deserve to be on the top tier of earners in that position? Maybe, maybe not. I think it's really just going to come down to what accolades he gets himself. I mean, he was right there in the
Yeah.
MVP conversation this year, up until the end. So we'll
It's
see.
it's a much less stressful
Yeah.
offseason this
Yeah.
offseason for sure. I mean, Bosa was stressed from like the day the NFC Championship ended. I
Yeah.
think obviously a lot of the Ayuk talk, you don't love to see that, but we saw similar things with like Debo's
Yeah.
brother, and he
Yeah.
ended up signing. So,
It's going to be the same
I
thing.
get where he's coming from. I mean, yeah, he wanted more throws. I think we'll make a deal. I think he knows that this is the right place to be.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I hope that John Lynch makes a lot of off-season moves. He's been pretty good at that so far, and in-season moves as well. I am excited that we have a first-round pick this year.
Yeah. Finally.
That's going to be interesting to see what they do with. But yes, I'm definitely less stressed going into this offseason. I feel like I've said Purdy's rookie years are our years to strike. And
Yeah.
after that, it gets a little harder. But after the last Super Bowl, I didn't know if we were going to be back.
Yeah.
And it gives me 2020 season was like the most cursed season ever.
Hmm.
But it gives me hopes that we have eventually made it back and should have made it back sooner.
Yeah. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
the health is going to be a big factor, as it always is. But assuming everyone's healthy, they have a roster that's sort of set up to do that, because they have paid the guys they need to pay. But speaking of Ayuk, there's two guys that I think, are up for extensions this year that they'll have to pay. And it's going to start with Brandon. you know, they gave him the extension last offseason. He's going to make about 14 million this season, last year in his contract. He'll be a free agent after this year, or after this next season, to win 2025. So it's extension time. I was looking at sort of the average annual salaries for receivers around the league on the top end. Debo got 23 million a year. I think he's probably going to ask for something similar, if not maybe a little
Mhm.
bit more. Again, I don't know what
Yeah.
the specifics of the negotiations are going to look like, but that's kind of what I expect, and I expect the Niners to pay it, because I think they know
Yeah.
Ayuk is a singular talent, and he's great in this offense. He's one of the best blocking receivers in the league as well. In addition to all
He's
the things he
amazing.
does, and there were plays I watched. I always watch him. And he makes these plays, but plays in the Super Bowl too. He made some great blocks. So I think that's the guy you have to pay, but I think it's going to be around that $23 million range, similar to Debo's. So that's what I expect. Yeah, and I assume you agree with them, trying to keep him on. And I think it's gonna be similar to Debo, where
100%. Yeah.
people in his camp are gonna be trying to say different things just for him to get some leverage in this deal. But I think both sides want to get it done.
Yeah. I hope they pay him. I hope they keep him. I think obviously when you're watching the Super Bowl, you're not getting too deep in a lot of the things. You're just kind of watching with emotions. But he called out several of his blocks
Yeah.
in that game, and to be able to see the impact of that when you're so emotionally high on something, it means that he's doing a good job. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the other guy is Dre Greenlaw, which will get very
Yeah.
complicated with the Achilles this year. So he's, similar to Ayuk. He has one more year left in his deal. He's making about 8 million this year. He'll be a free agent in 2025. Coming off the injury, I think they're really going to play things by ear in terms of, what he looks like. Coming off that
Mhm.
injury, he should be ready for at least September, maybe October of next year. So early in the season, I expect him to come back, if knock on wood, things go well with his recovery with the Achilles. So he should
He's
be
not
back.
getting Aaron Rodgers surgery, so he won't be back in training camp.
Kittle said he's got to hit up Aaron to see if he has any tips. So I mean, maybe with advancements in modern technology, Dre will be
Yeah.
back before the draft. Who knows? But so that'll be another thing to look at. Just how much money he's going to command in his extension if the Niners do it. I think they will want to. They are going to want to keep him on. He's
Yeah.
a young linebacker. I think he's only a year or two younger than Fred. So I think they want to keep those two together. And if he comes back and
Mhm.
looks anywhere near the same player that he is, I think it's an easy decision. So those are the two guys that you
Yep.
got to look for. They have a ton of, they have a good amount of free agents: Chase Young, Tayshawn Gibson, Kinlaw, Sam Darnold, backup quarterback, Oren Burks, Cleveland
Yep.
Farrell, Randy Gregory, Dwelly, and Warner, both of the tight ends. So those are kind of the key other free agents that they'll have to make decisions on. Do they want to pay Chase Young and keep him on the opposite side of Bosa? They're going to have to see what that free agent market's going to look like, or what the draft class is going to look like to put somebody on the
Yep.
other side next to Bosa. I think they've shown that they
See who
need
their
somebody
DC.
talented. Yeah, yeah, and that's going to be a
Yeah,
big part
who
of it
their
as well.
DC is gonna be. I think that will really determine his future. I'm very 50-50 on. I think it just depends on what he
Yeah.
asks
Gonna
for.
depend on the price. Gonna depend on the price. I think
Yep.
Tayshawn's gone. I think they're gonna go younger and cheaper with Jair. I think he showed he deserves to get
Mhm.
some reps and continue starts at that position. And hopefully, again, knock on wood, Talano will be back and healthy to play the other safety spot. So I think
Yep.
I'm encouraged what they look like going forward at safety.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean they have a list there. I don't want to get into any of the specifics and go on too long, but just some guys to look at free agency. And then DC candidates. Lauren, who do you think should be the next defensive coordinator of the San Francisco 49ers? This will be the last thing we do before we get to your sports memories.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Real quick, I don't have an answer for who I think it should be this year. I am scratching my brain. What I had thought was going to happen is the Niners were going to win the Super Bowl. They'd keep Steve Wilkes on for one other year.
Mm,
The Jets were going to have a horrible year, just the worst year ever. Saleh was going to get fired, and he was going to come back to the Niners.
bring
That
him
was my
home.
like long form plan forever. I mean, I think a lot. Gray ball's been thrown out.
Yeah.
I would be fine with that. I don't know if he's 100% who they the Niners just need this very exciting young DC. I feel like that's worked for them in the past. That works under Kyle.
Yeah.
So I don't really know how that would go. I've heard ramblings of Sherman. Um, like I don't think that's going to happen.
As in
Interesting.
Richard Sherman?
Then Richard Sherman.
Ah,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
No
Don't
coaching
think he would jump
experience.
from
Yeah.
don't think he would jump from fighting stupid fights with Skip Bayless to then going and being the 49ers DC, but thought that was
I
interesting.
like it. That's a headline
Um,
grabber.
I think that they will probably go with um, someone internal, honestly. Yeah.
That's my feeling as well. They have looked at other like defensive back, linebacker coaches from other teams. I think it's specifically
Hmm.
on the Titans. The name is escaping me, but they have some other candidates they looked at last season before they settled on Wilkes. You know, Vrabel's interesting. I don't think he'll take a secondary
Yeah.
role. Obviously, I don't think Pete Carroll or Belichick will. Brandon Staley is an interesting one. I don't think his personality fits what the Niners are looking for at a defensive coordinator. And obviously how things went
I
in
would
in LA was tough. So
I would I would seriously have to question how invested I would be in this next season if they hired Brandon Staley. Ben brought it up yesterday as a joke, and I had horror on my face. I think he's great on the defensive side. It's just hard to move past the like terrible job he
yeah.
did in for the Chargers. So yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't hate it because I think he's still a talented DC, and I think just giving him one thing to focus on would be better. But again, I just don't think it's
Mhm.
fit just based on personality.
Yep.
I think they want somebody who's going to be
Yep.
more inspirational for that side of the ball and just be more innovative. So I think they get somebody new. If my money was on it, I think they give somebody either internally or somebody who hasn't been a defensive coordinator yet a shot at that. And I
Yep.
think Kyle
Agreed.
wants. I
Yep.
think the biggest thing why Wilkes got fired, it's because Kyle wants the defense just to be handled. He doesn't want any, drama on whether you're in the booth or on the sideline or calling timeouts to check your play calls. I think he just wants it to be handled. He wants it to be in a guy he trusts. And I think, I think Wiltz is a great coach. I think he's a good motivator of the guys. I think just schematically it just didn't click, and I think he just
Yep.
they want to go in a
Agreed.
different direction. So we'll see what happens there. Obviously, a lot of interesting candidates out there. But that's kind of your little off season preview, I guess, as well. But Lauren, I
Yeah.
appreciate you going through the Super Bowl with me, but I would love to hear your favorite sports memories. I know we've kind of grown up in this family, and I know Niners probably are going to be in there. We've gone to
Yep.
games together,
Yep.
but I'd
Yep.
love to hear them.
Yeah. I mean, this was really hard because, we've gone to a ton of games as a kid, and I was thinking, oh, do I want to, name one where I was,
Yeah,
in the stadium, have a lot of great memories with our grandpa
yeah,
going to games.
yeah,
Those are always really, really high up there. But one that always comes back to me is, and I think they now just call it the catch three.
yeah,
Um, the catch three is probably my favorite sports moment ever. One, the Niners had been bad for so long at that point, and it was just painful to be a fan in a different way than it is right now.
yeah,
Um, and that there was 2 minutes left, and I think there were four touchdowns scored in that 2 minutes.
yeah.
And with the last one going to, you know,
The
why am I
Vernon.
blank? So it was
Yeah,
Alex Smith, and he was, why am I blanking out? He's my favorite 85, but
Vernon
not
Davis,
Kittle.
baby.
Vernon Davis. Thank you.
There you
Love
go.
Vernon Davis. One of my all-time favorite Niners. Just totally drew a blank right there.
It
And
happens.
watching him run back crying to Harbaugh. I hate that Harbaugh is in one of my greatest sports memories, but crying to Harbaugh after all of the drama with him is just like one of it was one of the most amazing moments. I'm bawling my eyes out,
Yeah.
and I will always remember it. And to make that memory even better, I ran into Alex Smith at the San Jose airport, and I told him that that was my favorite sports memory ever. And I thanked him for being a part of one of my favorite sports moments. And he said, that's one of the nicest things anyone said to me. Thank you. So that was
So
kind of the cherry on top. Like, he's a great guy. It's hard to beat that in my mind. It
yeah.
was, yeah.
That's it. That's, I mean, I think it has been brought up on the show before. I mean, that's just, it's definitely up there for me too, just being there. And I also cried a lot for that. I'm not afraid to admit it.
Oh yeah.
But hey, Alex
Oh yeah.
Smith, great guy. We're big fans of him here in this
Great
podcast.
guy.
Well,
Yeah.
any other honorable mentions before we check out of here? I know
You
you, you
know,
you've been to a
the
few
Warriors
Niners
winning their
Seahawks
first.
games too up there in Seattle.
Love, love going. I love going to Niner Seahawks games. I live in Seattle now, so I'm always in enemy territory. But we've basically made it a goal to go to every Niners Seahawks game. I will say, going into them, I thought I was going to get roasted. People were going to be mean to me. The Seahawks fans have been so nice. They are always so gracious. We've sat everywhere in the stadium, lower bowl, like behind the end zone, way up high. Every fan has been nothing but nice to me, very gracious. Um, yeah, I wouldn't say those are the highest memories because lately the Niners have just been crushing them, or like they randomly lose to a crappy Seahawks team.
Yeah,
I'd probably say the second honorable mention was the Warriors, the first Warriors championship with Steph. It was in San Francisco, like in the Mission area. Went out and celebrated afterwards. That was that was pretty amazing. I mean, there's no one in my mind that is a more beloved sports person than Steph to
yeah.
me. So that was definitely second place for me.
No, that's a great one. Being in the city for that is special. That's
Oh, great.
incredible. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, being there
yeah,
this past summer for the 2 summers ago, for the parade in San Francisco. Obviously, I'd been to the couple that they had in Oakland before that, so it was cool to be living in the city, going there and spending that time. So I do appreciate the fact that you were in San Francisco as well when that happened. So that's a
yeah.
fantastic memory. Lauren, this has
The
been
the
great.
third is definitely a Duke championship, but I wasn't going to mention this on the podcast.
Sorry, we can give Ben some compliments here. We love Duke basketball. Coach K, you know, never
Yeah,
forget.
yeah,
But yeah, but thank you, Lauren. This has been great. I appreciate you,
yeah,
putting your heart on your sleeve and going through this again with me. I think that the people will enjoy this. We got a good breakdown of this
yeah.
very sad again, another sad moment in our history of watching the 49ers. So hopefully, we're getting back on the bottom of the mountain, rolling the ball up the hill again, and hopefully it won't crush us in the next time we go up there.
Fingers crossed. This was like a therapy session for me. I feel like I owe you money. Really appreciate it. Longtime fan of the show, first time guest. Happy to be here.
Thank you, Lauren. She was not paid to say that, and we greatly appreciate your having on. Love you, cousin. We'll talk soon.
Love. Bye.
Yeah.